Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to episode 5 of Doom Patrol. So, story time real quick before we get into this. I'm recording this on Tuesday. As you guys know, I pre-record things for the entire week with our schedule now. Since we started this up, it's just made it so much easier. But over yesterday and today, I've had this weird stomach ache, and I don't know why. But it's like been it's not been too bad, so don't worry about that. It's not been like horribly debilitating, but it's been noticeable, and it's definitely it bothered me especially last night, Monday night, um, like when I was trying to go to sleep and all, and I've even had some just other issues related to that kind of thing. And I don't know why for the life of me, but because of that, I was almost worried I wasn't going to get to recording things on time. I was worried that I was going to have trouble getting this recorded. Like I've had Monday and Tuesday recorded since last week. I record Monday and Tuesday basically a week in advance because of when the stuff comes out. Plus Tuesday, I just like to record in advance anyways, just because it's 4 episodes at the moment. Once we get caught up, it'll be just generally easier, but still. And I recorded Wednesday's thing, but then it's like I was especially worried about this because it's a longer reaction than a lot of things. It's not like a regular show, which is like a 20-minute reaction or whatnot. This is double that length, pretty much. And so I was worried like that I was going to not be able to get to it by Thursday. Either that, or I would have to force myself to react to it even with the stomach ache. And luckily, weirdly enough, it's started to subside within the past like hour or so. And the weirdest part about it is when it started to subside. Like it was noticeable after I had lunch and everything. I had leftover potato soup because I made potato soup yesterday using the leftover ham bone from Easter. Um, and so like even after I had lunch and everything, I was still feeling it. I went up to the gas station, grabbed some things, and I had a cookie, a chocolate chip cookie, and this, which I actually still have some of this left. It's not like gone or anything, but this Bang energy drink, because I've been wanting to try out all these different flavors and all. This is Froze Rose. um, and for some reason, my stomach ache is subsiding now after having those. After having a chocolate chip cookie and an energy drink. And it's the weirdest thing. I didn't take any medicine or anything, because we don't really have any stomach medicine, I think, right now. But I didn't take any medicine or anything. I didn't do anything else. But I walked up to the gas station. It's a 15-minute walk one way. So 30 minutes total plus, like, I don't know, a minute or two inside the gas station. And I had a cookie and an energy drink. So it's just, I wanted to just talk about this somewhere because of just how weird and silly I find it. But because my stomach ache has started to subside, I am able to record this now. I am able to get to this reaction. So 'cause I was thinking about just taking the rest of today, again, recording this on Tuesday. I was thinking about taking the rest of today off from recording and everything while I tried to figure this out. Because again, it wasn't too bad, but it was definitely distracting, and I didn't want to record with it, honestly. But with this subsiding, and it's not perfectly gone right now. There's still like a little bit of discomfort in it, but it's so much better. It's so much better than it was before. um, so yeah, I should hopefully be able to be recording everything else today. But of course, you're seeing this on Thursday, but still. I just wanted to talk about that because I thought it was a really interesting, funny, and kind of WTF situation. Um, but I'm glad I'm getting to this because I'm very excited to see more of this show, especially since the last episode was the first of a two-parter. It seems. Um, the last episode was Cult Patrol. Each of the episodes is named like something else Patrol, and it's like, okay. And I don't even know what the episodes are called until afterwards. Pretty much. So I don't know what this episode is called yet. But the last one was Cult Patrol. And so we had this kid who was raised from birth to be this living book for this cult. And it would cause the destruction of the world, but he was told it would save the world. So yeah, there's this sorcerer guy, um, played by the same actor as Crowley from Supernatural. It's Mark something. I can never remember the actor's name. Um, it's Mark something. I do know that, but he's trying to fix things. He's trying to handle this, and he ends up going to the mansion looking for the professor, who is obvious, or the chief rather. I keep wanting to call him professor, the chief, but he's not there obviously. So he works with the Doom Patrol. They save the kid, and there's a singing horse head because that was a thing. Um, but they end up having this entire thing with like Cyborg and this guy kind of going at it a little bit, because science versus magic and all of that jazz. But they end up working together, and he's very much like his character in Supernatural, like Crowley. He's very ornery and very sassy and just really, really great acting. I love the actor. And as I said last time, I've seen him in other things, but this is definitely where I know him. I definitely know him mostly with Supernatural. um, and so yeah, they're having to face these cultists and all. A couple of them are transported to, I want to say it's Nurnheim or something like that, which looks like it's either inside of a snow globe or that was just some kind of like symbolism or something. I think it might actually be inside the snow globe, which is weird, but okay. It's Doom Patrol. I guess that's fine if it's weird. Um, and so yeah, they're now having to deal with the mother of the boy who was raised as the living book, who has ascended to this. I don't think she's supposed to be a god per se, but some kind of like higher being in general. The father technically, I guess, ascended too, but he was already dead because she killed him. So his corpse ascended, I guess. But there's all these cultists they've had to deal with and everything, and it's just like shit was kind of going poor. Things were going poorly. So I'm very excited to see where this goes and how they conclude this plot point and what it's going to entail going forward with the series. Um, I've really been enjoying this because it's really done well. Like this series is very clearly a parody of other live action superhero series. They blatantly in the first episode make fun of that. They blatantly make fun of the fact that it's another live action superhero series. They're constantly poking fun at different tropes and stuff within this within these kind of shows. And even without Mr. Nobody constantly narrating and breaking the fourth wall, they still showcase these kinds of tropes in a more comical way. Um, like even the stuff with the sorcerer character, like the kinds of spells he puts on are so ridiculous, like using Beatles songs or chewing gum that gives him knowledge, or so on and so forth. Um, it's it's ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous, but in a good way. It's both funny and engaging. There's dramatic moments, there's even some frightening moments, but it's very entertaining at the same time. It never takes itself too seriously, but it's also not just too purely comical. It balances things. And I think that's what really makes it work for me. On top of the actors are great. Matt Bomer and Brendan Fraser do great voice work because I do know, I don't think I knew before, but I do know now that Brendan Fraser and Matt Bomer aren't actually physically acting as their characters most of the time. Like when there's flashbacks to them before they became what they are now, that's obviously them. But the robot man body is not actually Brendan Fraser's body. It's a different actor, and it's just Brendan Fraser's voice being used. And the same with Larry. His body, it's actually a different actor from what I've read. Um, and I don't know who the other actors are, but yeah. So that it's really interesting that most of the time all we're doing is hearing their voice work and seeing someone else like physically move and express physically with their arms or their movements or whatnot. Like when you see like Robot Man react in a certain way, he'll like his body will like move in a certain way, like jerk back, or he'll move his head in a certain way, and it's like it's the expressiveness in just physical like movement and whatnot because he can't obviously emote with his face, so he has to emote with his body. And the actor who does that does a very good job, but you also have Brendan Fraser doing the voice work, and the voice work alone is fantastic. And I think I talked about this before in the one of the first reactions to this, probably the first, but I grew up with Brendan Fraser movies. I know how good of an actor he is. He was great in The Mummy, fantastic in George of the Jungle. I don't care what anyone says. George of the Jungle is a phenomenal movie. Um, he was great in stuff like um why is my mind blanking on that movie now? I think I've said it before too. In fact, I know I've said it before. The the one where he can speak things into reality with the books and the silver tongue, and I think Paul Bettany's in the movie too. Um, I can't think of the name of it right now, but Inkheart, that's it, Inkheart. He was great in that. Was great in so much. And with what happened to him and that caused him to be out of the spotlight for quite a while because of the abuse and shit he suffered, it's so good to see him making a comeback with stuff like this, even if he's never going to be as big as he was in his heyday, even if he's never going to be quite at the same level as he used to be in terms of the popular culture of movies and shows and whatnot. The fact that he's still able to do something like this again and do it so well is just, it's awesome, and I love it. And Matt Bomer, I've seen him in, I think, maybe one or two other things, but he always was a good actor from what I saw him in. And even the other actors here who I don't know, like the one playing Rita, she's fantastic. And I think last time, it was either the last one or the one before that, but I forgot to mention in the afterthoughts Rita's entire moment, her big moment. Like I talked about it in the reaction when it happened, but I think I forgot to mention in the afterthoughts because someone actually brought it up in a comment. Um, but it's like it was a huge moment for her and showing her heroic side, and I love that. And it's just like you see the actress portraying it so excellently, and you see the actress for Jane portraying all these different personalities. I love it when a character can portray different personalities like that in such a really believable, strong way. James McAvoy did well with that as well, with the movies Glass and what was the one before that called? Oh my god! Now my mind is blanking out on that too. It was the same character who ended up being in Glass, but it was the one right before that where his character actually debuted in. I can't for the life of me. Split. Yeah, because it was about his split personality. Yeah, it was called Split, and his character from it was revealed at the very end that it was part of the same um, continuity is unbreakable. And then Glass ended up bringing it all together as a conclusion to the trilogy. Um, but yeah, James McAvoy was phenomenal in that. And so far, Jane's actress here has been really great as well. And Cyborg's actor has been doing a great job. Like, this is a good Cyborg. I really like this portrayal of Cyborg. Um, and the thing is, I, I really want to. I'm really unsure about this, but I know that these characters before the Doom Patrol show actually like started, these characters actually appeared in an episode of Titans. I think I mentioned this before as well. And I'm wondering now, should I check out Titans? Like, I was avoiding it because I've seen a couple of clips that really bothered me on how the characters were portrayed, especially Raven. But I'm wondering now, maybe I should check it out. Maybe it's better than I might think it is. I don't know. Maybe. That could be a possible future reaction, donation reward or not. But um, I think for now, I'll just stick with Doom Patrol and see where this goes. Because I'm definitely interested, and I've definitely been impressed by this, much more so than I ever thought I would. Um, so I'm really hoping that it continues with that. Oh, and going back to Doom Patrol appearing in Titans, by the way, I heard that it's a little different, and so it technically isn't in the same continuity as this series. Like that, it's not Cyborg who's worked with the Doom Patrol. It's apparently Beast Boy. I don't know all the details. I'm not like fully spoiled on it or anything. I just know that little bit of it. Um, so apparently it's not in the same continuity as this series or anything, but it still might be interesting to check out nonetheless. I wonder if it was actually because of that episode that this series was like made. I wonder if this was like a spin-off of that in a way. That would actually be pretty cool. um, but I'm definitely excited to see where this goes because we haven't seen Mr. Nobody for a while, it seems. Like it's been a few episodes, hasn't it? We saw him in the first two episodes. I think he was in episode 3 as well. Was he in episode 3? No, because episode 3 was the Nazi episode, right? Yeah, because last episode, episode 4, was Cult Patrol. So yeah, episode 3 was the Nazi one. He was only in the first 2 episodes so far. He's actually been gone for a couple episodes. And he was kind of painted as like the main villain from what I've gathered. So I'm really interested to see if maybe some of this other stuff he's been pulling the strings behind. I mean, obviously we know the Nazis are connected to him, and he was definitely a big, like, noticeable mention in that episode. But I mean, obviously with the Doctor having made him into what he is now, but it's like he hasn't actually appeared in a while, and he hasn't been narrating in a while. I think I might be wrong. I might be misremembering. But either way, we're just gonna get this started, hope for the best, and see how rather this two-parter ends, or maybe it might even be more than two-parter for all we know. But I'm definitely interested, so let us get this going and see what we got. Yeah. So when the screen fades black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So in the first episode of this series, we had such a huge focus on Cliff that I had kind of thought like he was going to be like the major focus character of this series, and that the others, while still important and while still having plenty of focus and plenty of attention, would kind of take more of a back seat to him while we kind of saw through his eyes and his experiences. But we're seeing more and more as each episode goes on, this is not the case. We've gotten great focuses on characters like Rita and why do I always forget his name? um oh my god. The pilot, I can't remember his name right now. I do not know why, but I always forget his name. But Cyborg as well, and obviously Jane. And Jane is really interesting. So apparently, she was originally Kay, this girl who, through some traumatic experience when she was young, had all of these different personalities come into being through dissociative identity disorder. We don't know what the tragic experience was at this moment, but some big trauma caused her mind to split like that. And all these different personalities, so many different personalities were created and eventually given powers, as we know. And eventually her kind of core personality as well as just overall identity became known as Jane. And it's possible that Kay is still in there. That the original Kay still exists, but we have not truly seen her. We got a glimpse of her, but that was due to the mother manipulating things with her new ascended powers and whatnot. But that wasn't natural. Like Cliff was turned into a brain as well, so which granted he's a brain in a robot suit, but still it wasn't natural, wasn't a natural state. It was brought forth unwillingly, and it doesn't really count. But we see at some point during her life, because presumably of her dissociative identity disorder, she was put into a mental institution that she apparently, from what we got, repeatedly broke out of. She was able to go to punk rock shows and stuff, but was always eventually caught. And we see why she was breaking out of it. She was consistently and horrifically abused, mistreated, and threatened by the doctors and orderlies there. Physically, mentally, and emotionally abused, too. We saw examples of all of that in there. And I personally have never known anyone with dissociative identity disorder to the most of my knowledge. But I've known plenty of people who have had various mental disorders of varying kinds, of varying like levels and whatnot. And I myself suffer under a couple of them. And luckily, I've never been to a point where I've needed to go to a mental institution, but I've had friends who have had to check themselves in because of episodes and stuff. And I've always been afraid of that kind of idea of friends going to these places and being abused by the staff working there. And just people in general, even ones I don't know, having to go through shit like that. And it's always been kind of like a fear of mine, not for myself, but for others, that this kind of thing is more prevalent than you might think. That's always been my fear, that it's more prevalent, more consistent in the world than you would hope it would be. And I don't know. I do not know how prevalent this is. I know that there have been many cases where it has happened. But I don't know how prevalent it is, and I hope, I wish that it isn't very prevalent, that it's rare. But I also can't say that with certainty. And honestly, you can't really trust a lot of like official reports on that because a lot of stuff is hidden and a lot of stuff is just kept out of the public knowledge, basically. Seeing Jane have to go through all of this, it explains her so much. It explains the amount of pain we've seen her personalities face. Like, even Hammerhead, who is very aggressive and loud and wild, we've seen there is more to her. That she's not just this overly aggressive, angry person, that there's trauma there. We've seen it with Jane, we've seen it with all of her personalities. And we're starting to really see why. And we're seeing also why she cares for Niles so much. Because Niles, as I mentioned in the reaction, is the first person to truly care for her. The first person to see her as a person and to show respect and patience and understanding towards all of the personalities. To see them all as valid, as people, worthy of love. He literally saved her from hell, from a hell on earth of abuse and torture and threats of being turned into a vegetable, basically. And it's really sad. And I'll be honest, I thought because of Niles having created Cliff's robot body and everything and just other stuff we've seen, I thought Niles was behind her powers. But as we found out now, that's not the case. Her powers were given to her through horrific experimentation against her will prior to her ever meeting Niles. And she had them while she was in this asylum. And at points she used them for good to help her, and that's probably in a lot of ways how she was able to get out and escape. Especially with this doctor personality allowing her to use the power of suggestion, which, as I noted in the reaction, is a very terrifying and extremely powerful ability. Like, it may not have all the flash and excitement of your typical superpower, but the power of suggestion like that, the power of influence, is exceptionally strong. And it could be used in so many really horrific ways. Like, I mean, you saw in this episode, like, she was using it to almost have this doctor stab himself in the eye with his pen. She used it to create this cult with these prisoners in the asylum. Let's be honest, they were prisoners at that asylum. She created this cult that eventually ended up saving the world. It's just, the power of suggestion is astounding in the world of superpowers. It pretty much gives you the power to do practically anything. And yeah, the one big weakness is if the person can't hear you. But if they can, you're pretty much golden. And I feel like most people wouldn't be prepared for that. So it's just wild. But yeah, like Jane was the star of this episode. And honestly, I'm really loving her character. She's really becoming one of my favorites. Like, I definitely liked her prior to this, but this really is knocking it out of the park for me. And then there's Rita. I really want to talk about Rita because I did forget to talk about her before. So I really want to talk about her here. In the last episode, Rita had a big moment where she really just kind of broke out of that shell she had built around herself and did her best, did her damnedest to help Elliot. She had grown to care for him and wanted to see him, this kid raised since birth for all 18 years of his life, to be a tool for this cult. She wanted to help him. And by the end of this episode, she failed. And this is going to affect her, for sure. It affected her when she saw Elliot decreated. And when he didn't come back, with the recreator coming into play. You know that's going to affect her going forward. Because she had really become invested in helping with this and helping Elliot. But looking at it from this perspective here, the recreator, all of that stuff, didn't like stop Elliot and the decreator from being a thing. So if he were brought back, it would still be a danger, a threat to the world. As much as she wanted to save him, as horrible as it is that he wasn't brought back, it is, you could say, for the greater good. But at the same time, you cannot argue with Rita's perspective on this, that this was a kid, an innocent kid, raised from birth for a mission that he had no say in, for a destiny that he had absolutely no choice in. It was completely against his will, and there's nothing he could do about it, and that's the problem. This is the one, like I said, this is one of those cases where there's no right answer. You hear those questions all the time. Would you sacrifice one person you love to save millions of people? There's no right answer to a question like that. Who would you rather sacrifice between your son or your daughter, between your mother and your girlfriend? Stuff like that, that there's just no right answer to. You cannot rightfully choose one or the other and say it's the better option. But if there's a situation where you have to make a choice, you have to do what, morally speaking, you find to be right. Even if it's not. Even if it hurts, even if it's hard, even if it leaves a lot of problems. And it's not going to be the right decision. It's not going to be a good decision. But if those situations arise where there's no other option, you have to make a choice, then it has to be done. You can't just, if you literally can't abstain, then what are you going to do? You have to choose one or the other. Again, there's no right option. There's no correct choice. And it's hard because Elliot deserved to live life, a real life, free from that destiny that again he was thrust into. But there was no way to stop it at that point either. So even if he were brought back, all this shit could just happen again. And then what? So in the end, it's like a choice had to be made, and it's by not having him be brought back, it does save the world, but it's still not the right choice. It's still not a good option. You know what I mean? Larry, whose name I just remembered, by the way, Larry didn't have as big a role to play in this episode. He definitely had a role to play, and his big moment was with Niles, just talking about the spirit inside him, and kind of giving this idea about him talking to the spirit and just actually being honest with it and everything. And that was pretty much all he really had a role to play with here. Cyborg also kind of took a back seat in this episode comparatively. Though he did have a role at the end with Mr. Nobody fucking with his arm and all of that jazz going on. And the fact that his arm could be fixed through the technology and all, but that it would send out an SOS to his father and everything, and he didn't want to have to do that. It was just a shit show and everything. And the big thing in this is the return of Mr. Nobody. Because I had mentioned in the pre-thoughts, it's like, okay, we haven't seen him for a couple of episodes. And they even bring that up here. It's like, I've been gone for the past 2 episodes, like breaking the fourth wall again. And it's like, he finally comes back into play because honestly, how else are they going to defeat this thing, the Decreator? They basically needed to bring him back in because of how big of a threat this was. Like, even for him, even for Mr. Nobody, this was a notable threat that he needed to work with Niles on to defeat. They worked together. They formed a plan. They worked with the Doctor personality and were able to get the Recreator thing going and everything. And it worked out. But there was a secondary plan that Mr. Nobody put into place as well. And that seems to be having to do something with the concept of the actual Doom Patrol, which we hadn't actually brought up in the series until now. He gave one last mission to the Doctor with everything that had happened when Jane was rescued by Niles. And it has something to do with the Doom Patrol. That's all we know. So the Doom Patrol doesn't exist as a group yet. Like, our heroes aren't called the Doom Patrol yet or whatnot. So this is going to kind of, I assume, go into that maybe, like the creation of that team. But what does Mr. Nobody want with it? Like, what is the purpose of this, I wonder? We also got to see him like in his like normal looking like human form as well. So that was interesting, getting to see just Alan Tudyk like on screen as Alan Tudyk. Definitely a great scene in that regard with his acting chops on full display physically, not just vocally and whatnot. More so than when he's in his Mr. Nobody form and all. Alan Tudyk's always been a phenomenal actor, but a lot of times you don't see him physically in a role. You hear his voice. He's huge with voice acting, as either characters or even as animals. But there are cases of where he has done, obviously, physical roles and stuff here and there. Big ones being like, I believe that Firefly series he was in. Um, I never actually saw it, but I believe he was in that. He was in A Knight's Tale, which is definitely one of the big roles I know him for. He's a great actor, and I really wish he was in more things as himself, like as an actual actor. But maybe he is, and I just don't know about him. But he definitely got to show off those chops here for sure. And I really like that scene with Timothy Dalton, just the two of them going back and forth. Um, and I'm really interested to see where things go with all of these characters now after this big event. Because, like, even the event in the first two episodes was not this huge. This entire end of the world scenario was like, well, it was an end of the world scenario. Those are always a massive deal. And usually those kind of things would be like either a season long kind of story arc, or like it would be for the season finale or something like that. Just kind of like this big thing to kind of end the season off of that everything's kind of built up to. But no, this is just kind of like in the middle of the season. It's just like, oh, we're gonna have an end of the world scenario, no big deal. Um, and a pretty damn big one too. Like, again, the fact that Mr. Nobody was even concerned about it and had to work with Niles on it. Um, and I'm really sad that Mr. Nobody took Niles away before Jane could get that hug, and like she needed that hug. I feel so bad for her. There's so much I want to see these characters experience in this series. And I really, really want to see a few certain things specifically. Cliff and his daughter reuniting. I want to see Jane get to hug the chief again. Stuff like that. I want to see Rita like truly be able to save someone and really just have it affect her positively. Stuff like that. I want to see Larry and the spirit working in perfect harmony together. That would be fantastic. Um, I want to see things like that with these characters. And I'm really hoping we get to. And it doesn't have to happen right away. But I'm really hoping that the series is going places that would allow that kind of thing to happen. And allow these characters to truly shine and grow and become so much better. Because I love the comedy in this series. I love how absurd it can get at times, like with the with the roach out there prophesying and chanting about the end of the world and arguing with cheese with or arguing with a rat about cheese and stuff like that, voiced by Curtis Armstrong because of fucking course he's voiced by Curtis Armstrong. But it's like I love that kind of stuff, but I also really love the humanity of this series. Like I said in my pre-thoughts, this show blends comedy and drama really well. There's so many funny, ridiculous moments, but there's also a lot of just genuinely great, like dramatic, serious moments. And you come to care about these characters really strongly. And you want to see them succeed and you want to see them happy. You love seeing the funny stuff happen and you love seeing Cliff react to shit because he just Brendan Fraser just goes ham when he's reacting to shit in this series. It's great. But you also want to see them happy. You want to see them just have these good positive moments that affect them in a way that's not so negative all the time. Because they've all gone through so much shit, both from outward sources and themselves. God, all of these characters hate each other, or hate themselves, rather. You have to realize that. Every single one of these characters hate themselves for different reasons, for different, just in different ways, but they all have so much self loathing because of the events of their past and even present. And you want to see them just kind of get past that and work their way into some self-love. And it's just, I really, really want to see these characters happy. Even even if it's not at all times, I just want them to have some victories here. Not just in terms of saving the day, but actually just in happiness. And that's how much that this show has worked for me. That's how much it's succeeded with its characters, that it makes me care about them this much. I really want to see them happy. And a series that does that for me is something special, because it shows that the writing, the dialogue, the characters are so well handled that that is my wish for this series, that I want to see them happy. And so many other shows have done this, animated and not. Um, Supernatural definitely did this, going with the connection with Mark Shepard and even Curtis Armstrong. He was in Supernatural as well. Um, and so many other animated shows, as I mentioned, has done this plenty of times. And I'm just really glad that this series is ending up doing the same. Not only is it just genuinely good, which is, for reasons I've talked about before, unusual, in my opinion, for a live action superhero series. It's not only genuinely good, but it's so good that I care. It's like gone past the point of just being good to being great, to being something special, to being something just so investing. I am invested in this series, in these characters. So yeah, it's definitely clear that I'm obviously continuing this. Like, I'm not dropping this at pretty much at all. I don't think that's ever going to happen. This show would have to really fuck up really quickly and really strongly for that to happen. But yeah, it's just, I really love what they're doing with this. And I'm surprised that I love what they're doing with this so much. And the best part about it, honestly, is that I wouldn't have checked this out. As I've stated, I don't like a lot of live action superhero shows, most live action superhero shows. And I never really knew anything about this. I never really had a reason to check this series out. So I never would have. But then Ribs, I still don't know how to pronounce your name, I apologize, chose this as a donation reward. And it's like, I am so glad that you did. Because it allowed me to see a series I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Like with other stuff I've had for donation rewards, like Dragon Prince, like, yeah, I would have checked that out, for sure. But this, I would have never checked out. Or series like Dororo, another one I had as a donation reward, I would have never checked out. So that's why I love having this donation reward system on the channel, for chances and opportunities like this, for you guys to suggest something that ends up becoming something special to me. And I'm not saying like this is one of my favorite series of all time or anything right now. No, it's not reached that level, but it could. It could. And that's saying something. I'm as invested as in this as I had become in Supernatural early on. It's the same kind of feeling. And the same kind of feeling as stuff like Avatar and The Legend of Korra, with how quickly and strongly I became invested in that. Or One Piece. Or plenty of these other series, Ruby, even. And like all of these other shows, it's probably not going to be perfect. It's going to have its issues here and there. And that's fine. But it has a chance, for me at least, to see it as a really special top of the line series. And I'm hoping that it reaches the point where it does become one of my favorite shows. And again, I could very much see that happening. So thank you again to Rips for donating for this. And I really can't wait to see more. Now, obviously, between seasons 1 and 2, we'll have a break and everything, but um, I'm really, really excited to see how season 1 continues to go, especially after this post-apocalyptic, or not post-apocalyptic, but this apocalyptic end of the world scenario. Like, where do they go from here? How do you take that further? Like you have in the middle of the season a scenario where your main villain has to work with the heroes to save the world from a supernatural threat, a god that was created literally from faith. And it's like, how do you go up from there? I'm just excited to see what they do to end this season, much less to just continue it at this point. Um, but tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of Doom Patrol. And thank you all so much for continuing to tune in. As always, no spoilers. Do not tell me anything about what's to come. But for now, I hope you enjoyed. So I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.